Hello and welcome everybody to the second episode of the Chalk Talk podcast presented to you by capwizard.io with your host Panz and Ches. We are excited to bring you a lot of news that's happening around the world of hockey this week. But first and foremost, I want to turn it over to my buddy Panz. How the hell are you, bud?
Oh, doing absolutely fantastic. Happy to be here. Happy to be talking hockey. And, excited just to dive into it. Excited for the season to start. And, yeah, that's all I got.
Well, that's great, man. That's great. Um, let's not waste any time here. Let's get into the news. It's been an exciting week. First and foremost, we want to talk about Jeremy Swayman. There's been a lot of news back and forth, a lot of opinions being shared about what's going on there in Boston. It looks like they have not reached an agreement there with Swayman. In fact, listening to Ryan Whitney and the Spit and Chicklets podcast, we learned that according to their source, that apparently there was an offer given to Swayman that was way under what he was expecting, and it looked like it was a 4 by 6.2, and that was like the last offer that was given. So 4 years by 6.2 million. We reported on our last episode, and it's reported well across all platforms at this point that he's looking for somewhere in the average annual value of like 10 million. So it's almost a kick to the face or a kick to the nuts there with that offer. I'm curious, what are your thoughts there, Pants?
So I was upset to hear that news from Spit and Chicklets from Whitney. Um, though I trust those guys, I hope it's not true. Um, if so, like you said, it's, it's disappointing to hear as a fan. It's disappointing if that was truly offered to Jeremy Swayman. On his end, he is a top-notch goaltender in the league, one of the best American goaltenders in the NHL at this time. He's only 25 at the moment, and he may seem a little smaller, but he's 6'3", and he moves like a smaller goalie with that big size. A little bit of bias here with being a Bruin, but I think he's one of the best goalies in the world right now, and it's foolish to offer him anything under 8 million a year.
Hmm.
I know the current argument is that he hasn't played enough NHL games, but he has played 132 NHL games, and he did finish his last 12 over the playoffs. He had a 93.3 save percentage while going 6-6. That's quite impressive by
Damn.
just about anyone's standards.
I would
Um,
agree. Wow. Holy shit. Well, I mean, now that you mention it, yeah, that is a crazy stat. Um, I just think it's weird. Let's look back at what they did in the offseason. I know that they had easily the best tandem going into last season, and they got rid of Linus Ullmark, who we all knew to be a stud, almost brick wall esque goalie. He actually won the Vesna 2 seasons ago. So, I mean, to me, that tells me as a hockey fan, we are all in on this other option. We have a great goalie here, and if we're going to move Ullmark, that means we're putting our cards in this piece, which would be Swayman in this case. Now, I know we talked last pod in regards to their upcoming huge prospect, Busey, in that it's going to be great. But I don't think by any means anyone's confident in just giving him the torch for the remainder of the games and giving him that full workload. But what are your thoughts there, Ben?
I do completely agree with you, even though I'm a huge Busey fan. I, it's tough, even if he is the best goalie at a rookie camp, not rookie camp, training camp. With Swayman there, even if he is the best, it's tough to give him full reins with zero NHL games played yet. But he is of that skill. He is an NHL goaltender, and he will be fighting hard for that backup spot, if not for the starter spot in Boston this season.
Definitely.
I'm extremely happy to have him in the Bruins system. The Bruins have, once again, great goalie development, one of the best goalie coaches in the world, and Bob Essena. And Very excited, even though we are in troubling times with the Swayman contract at the moment before the season. Very excited for Busey. Very excited for Swayman. And I'm also excited to see how Corpusalo's game can come back to fruition.
I couldn't agree more. The reason that is he's got a great defense in front of him. I think he's got the best defense he's ever had in front of him right now. There's an exciting few years with Boston coming up. So Corpusalo is definitely one to watch. But before we move on, just curious because something we do here on Cap Wizard and Chalk Talk is we're really heavy in the analytics of contracts. Prospect development is certainly a focus, but we want to have an extensive breakdown of each contract and grade it based off the efficiency, basically, across its entirety. So I wanted to hear your thoughts, Pans. What would you think a good contract for Swayman would be, assuming maybe that 10 million AAV might not be able to be reached? What are your thoughts on a compromise there?
So it's tough. In a city like Boston, you have seen numerous times veteran, solid NHL players take pay cuts. But the way I view it, last year with arbitration, that's kind of where Swayman took his pay cut, is to get, and that's kind of why they're at the where we're currently at.
So I'm gonna just throw a number out there. You got to let me know if you think this is crazy. I think the 8 years is definitely something he's looking for, and I'm just gonna throw it out there. Do you think 8 by 8.5 is doable? You think that's something his camp would be excited about? You think that's a compromise he's open to? You think that's even something the Bruins can afford or would offer? What are your thoughts?
I like 8 by 8.5. That mix in a couple of signing salary bonuses, and we could be happy on both sides. I think 8.5 works for the Bruins cap space wise. I think currently they're around 9.3 left. So that gives a little bit of wiggle room for who they want to call up for maybe that 13th forward spot.
Mm.
Um, but I truly believe 8 by 8.5 is great for Swayman and for the Bruins and able to just get past this while Swayman's getting paid, but still maybe not quite as much as he would like. He's still getting paid a lot of money to be with a solid franchise that he loves to be with. I think that could work out for both.
Well, I agree there, Pans. Not to, beat a dead horse. We're going to move on to that. But I think a segue and kind of a bridge piece that was released in the news this week to that's good to compare, I should say, is Elliot Friedman came out on his podcast and was quoted in regards to Shesterkin, who many could argue is the other best goalie in the world right now. Certainly two of the best in the space that are looking for contracts, definitely. And it looks like the quote he had was he wouldn't be surprised if Shesterkin was the highest paid player in the league. Now, when I see this, when I understand what's going on in the Bruins Swayman contract negotiation piece, if I were Shesterkin, if I were Igor and his agent, I would almost be waiting, kind of watching this, seeing how it is. Because inevitably, I imagine he's going to want whatever number Sway has a little bigger than that. So I'm curious what this could do because I am almost certain the impact and the negotiation finalizing, I guess, or the contract they come to an agreement on with the Swayman and Bruin situation will certainly have a big effect on that Rangers Shesterkin situation. Would you add anything there, Pants? Because I definitely see that tie. Those two guys are so good, borderline the best two in the world right now. Certainly, I think the only two at that caliber that are still looking for a contract right now that aren't under contract. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you there. I definitely see the comparison between the two. The tough part being where I can see where Don Sweeney of the Bruins is a little bit hesitant compared to Shesterkin. Going back to Swayman just playing 132 NHL games compared to Igor Shesterkin, who I believe is 27 or 28. He played 3 or 4 seasons in the KHL in the Russian top pro league and won a championship there before coming over. He already proved his value and worth before even making it to the NHL, where Swayman is a guy who was drafted in the fourth round, though a lot of teams liked him. Developing to this level is very unheard of, and you would like to see him get paid, but it's two different sides. It's a goalie you know is going to be great in Shesterkin from when he got here to Swayman who worked up to this. Is this something that he can keep going, that he can positively sustain over a long period of time? Truly, I think it is. I think he's worth the money, but I can see where GMs might have certain questions or doubts.
Great point. Well, we'll definitely be monitoring both contract negotiations here and providing some analysis once we hear what those came out to be. We'll definitely be providing some grading, and as those contracts go by, it's going to be great to kind of analyze and reflect on how those are working out for the teams. Of course, as we covered last podcast, the cap is growing and growing quickly, on pace to grow even more in the next few years. So that obviously bodes well for everybody's cap space, gives a little more wiggle room for GMs to kind of work with. But let's move on to the next piece of news because there's so much to cover. In recent news, the first overall pick, Celebrini, for the San Jose Sharks, actually just came out and announced that he's going to be living with Jumbo Joe Thornton. And he's going to be living with him and his family the rest of this season. It looks like Will Smith has also come out, and he will be living with Patrick Marleau's family, two incredibly talented Sharks that worked together in that, Sharks franchise while we were growing up. They were a fun, dynamic duo to watch. I'm just really curious, what do you think this means for them? I mean, how do you think this is going to really affect their development?
I think it's an absolutely amazing move by not only Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau, but by the Sharks organization as a whole. This not only helps these two incredible young men, young hockey players develop, feel safe and at home, but it helps the culture of the organization to grow. And this is what you love to see from an organization like the Sharks. And Macklin Celebrini going to live with another former first overall pick, Joe Thornton, is just a story you love to hear. And these are two absolutely great NHL vets through our entire lives have been just stand up guys, stand up players, teammates, leaders, and to have two guys who each played over 1,700 NHL games, each had over 1,000 points, have them be leaders to these young new generation of the Sharks. It's very exciting. I'm excited to watch Celebrini and Smith this year. So good. I'm happy for them. And this, once again, great move by the Sharks organization and by Marleau and Thornton, two absolutely great guys.
Yeah, two buttes at that, as we would like to call them. Something that kind of is a great kind of comparison there is Bedard, right? Like this past season, Bedard was a first overall pick. He came into a franchise that really needed a new player like him, really needed a X factor caliber, elite caliber player that's going to be the cornerstone of the franchise. And it's tough when you're that young to learn, to grow, to develop the way you used to, or the way you're used to, from your past years. And I think in the NHL side of things, you have vets like Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau that can really teach you what it takes to wake up a little earlier and get into these workouts. I know they're already doing that anyways. You don't become Macklin, Celebrini, and Bedard and Will Smith without that extra effort. But staying more disciplined and just making sure they have mentors. I mean, I can see that right now as something maybe Jumbo Joe and Marleau didn't have. But look at last season with Bedard. He was living with the Nick Foligno's family. I mean, I know he had that slight injury, but Bedard had a stellar season for his rookie year. Now, say what you will, and I know everyone's excited to watch his sophomore year here with the Hawks. He's got a very exciting development. I think his leadership, I think his discipline on and off the ice, I think his drive could only have grown more by working with a guy or living with a guy like the Felinos. And I'm sure with Will Smith, and I'm sure with Macklin Celebrini, the case will certainly be the same. And I think one other point that kind of draws to that is actually there's kind of a viral video of Brady recently, Tom Brady, that is the quarterback, the GOAT quarterback that everyone considers GOAT. He came out and said something about starting quarterbacks that are young, and it goes to exactly what we're talking about here. Tom Brady mentioned how nowadays so many rookie quarterbacks come into the league expecting a starting role and expecting to make a great impact. Sometimes that honestly stunts their growth, stunts their exceptional status that first year because they're kind of overwhelmed. It's a lot to handle. He said he learned from Drew Bledsoe. Aaron Rodgers learned from Brett Favre, and we could go on and on. But it's great to have a vet to lean on or to watch do it. And now Bedard, Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith, these are different situations because, yeah, they're living with those players. And last year, Foligno and Bedard were still teammates. This situation is more from a mentor stance. And I think it's great. It can only help the young players and the young studs kind of grow even further and develop their game even more. And I couldn't be more excited for the league and these great, fast new wave of players that are coming in, including these three that we've been talking about. But I don't know if you had anything to add there. There was a new piece of news coming out of the Philadelphia Flyers organization. Panz, do you want to cover that?
Yeah, some big news with the recent retiring of Mark Stahl after 17 NHL seasons. He's retiring from playing, but still staying in the NHL as a player development assistant with the New York Rangers. And that's the team I believe he spent most of his career with, though he did end in Philadelphia. He spent most of his years as an assistant captain for the Rangers, a little bit in Detroit, a season in Florida, but an absolutely great career by one of the best defensemen of my childhood, playing over 1,100 games in 17 seasons. Mark Stahl was what you want to get from just about any hockey player. Great leader, good veteran, overall great guy.
I love that point. Talk about a great person to have on your blue line or teaching young players on the blue line. I just remember all the damn times I was watching those Rangers growing up with McDonough on the blue line and then having Mark Stahl in his prime. He was a scary person to handle. Someone that players had a tough time working around. I think it had to be a fun situation for the Stahl brothers, two of them being offensemen, and then Mark being the defender. I'm sure he got plenty of reps with his with Eric and Jordan there, without a doubt. It is exciting. I think there is something to be said about bringing that playing style and that playing experience into coaching. We've seen it dozens and dozens and dozens of times in just the NHL and across all the other major sports. I mean, look at Ray Bork right now with what he's been doing up in Edmonton and how incredibly tight, tough, strong, and foolproof that defense has turned into under him in just the last year that he's been coaching. We can go on and on, but some players aren't the best coaches. Some players turn into great coaches. I'm very confident that Mark Stahl's impact will be had or will be seen there in New York, and we're looking forward to kind of following that development and seeing how their blue line develops with a guy like that working with them. One other piece that came out here, also from Elliot Friedman, there was a post made in regards to Thatcher Demko. Now, as we all know, last postseason, Vancouver came in very hot. They were very exciting. They had a lot of expectations in the postseason. Unfortunately, there was an injury that came about with Thatcher Demko, their starting goalie. Unfortunately, after a lot of different medical examinations, it was decided that apparently whatever's going on with him cannot be solved or cured with a surgery. So inevitably, that means he's just going to have to kind of tough things out and learn how to play and grow with that in the background. I mean, I know you're a goalie fan, so I got to hear your opinion. What are your thoughts here? How do you think this is going to affect his play moving forward? What are your thoughts on, how that's going to really affect him at all, overall?
So it's tough to kind of comment on that, mostly because I don't know the full extent of the injury. To be playing through any type of injury all the time, I I believe it might take a hit at his ability. But the Canucks are already trying to combat that with limiting ice time, trying to rest him a bit more. I truly hope he's able to play at his best because Thatcher Demko is one of my favorite goalies in the league. The guy's just incredible to be able to move the way he does at his size. He's absolutely fantastic, though it's just a small amount of games through 5 playoff games in the NHL. He's let up less than a goal a game and has a 97.4 save percentage. I know it's a small sample size, but
Damn.
Thatcher Toe is a really solid goalie. I think if he started his career with a different team, he may be viewed as one of the best goalies in the league earlier on. But I'm very happy he's starting to really earn his stake in the league, and he's being honored as one of the best goalies in the league. So I hope he's able to play through this. Once again, I don't know the full extent, but wishing him all the best and as healthy of a season as he can possibly have.
Hey, Pans, I couldn't agree more with you there, bud. Honestly, it's going to be interesting to follow the development of this injury. Hopefully, he can tough it out. Hell, we know hockey players are tough, and we know that he's going through it. But it did look like they had to lean on their young goalie Artur Shilovs in the postseason, while Demko is kind of figuring that situation out. And I do potentially expect some more workload going to the backup. I don't necessarily see them, with this injury, expecting Demko to play 60 games. It's just hard, now with the team consensus of 1A, 1B, and just more of a strategy to have less of a workload for some of those goalies to make it easier and have someone fresh in the crease every night. It definitely might be a strategy the Canucks and Rick Tocchet have to kind of think about in this offseason going into the year, kind of monitoring and not pushing Thatcher Demko too much. But of course, those types of goalies, Thatcher Demko, when healthy, is one of those players who can be relied on 60 games of the year, if not more. So, he could do it. It's just a matter of how much his body can take, and we'll certainly be monitoring that here. Now, a new development just came out in the world of hockey. Actually, in regards to an update we had last week, the terribly tragic news of Johnny and Matty Gaudreau passing. It rocked the entire community. It rocked the entire sports world. It rocked the entire hockey world. And really terrible news. There was actually this past Monday, a service that was held in Media, PA, actually not too far away from where you and I grew up, Hans. And his wife Meredith Goudreau, she had incredible words to speak, in regards to Sean Monahan and Kevin Hayes, and that impact that they had on Johnny as just a genuine person, a friend, and of course as a leader on the ice too. Those two guys, our hearts go out to them because I know that they're probably feeling it just a little more than some of the other people in this community. But it's really did rock the world. I think a really sad piece of news is Meredith actually came out and said she's actually 9 weeks pregnant with her third child. So just crazy thing to come out with all the recent news revolving the Goudreau family. Our hearts and our prayers and thoughts go out to everyone in the Goudreau family, friends, loved ones, everyone that was affected by this tragic news. And we do know that Meredith Goudreau does have an incredible support system in Kevin Hayes, Sean Monahan, and so many other players, coaches, leaders around the hockey world, let alone the loved ones in their community. With that being said, wanted to move into another piece of news here. It's in regards to our PWHL. The exciting announcement that came out this week. The PWHL has actually announced the 6 new teams and the 6 new team logos for the inaugural 6 that they're going to have in their league. And we got you here. We want to report that. It's going to start with the Boston Fleet, Minnesota Frost, New York Sirens. We have Ottawa Champs, Montreal Victoire, it looks like, and Toronto Scepters. So, right off the bat, I love the names. They're very unique. Curious what your thoughts are there, bud.
Very excited to see this next step in the PWHL for not only the growth of women's hockey, but for the sport of hockey as a whole. I love all the new jerseys and all the new team names. I especially love Toronto. I love the Minnesota Fleet. I love Toronto's jerseys. I think they have really nice colors, a good schemeway, a great logo. I think the Minnesota Frost is a great team name. Once again, great logo, good colors, and of course, absolutely love the Boston Fleet. I love the dark green, the anchor with a little bit of homage to the Hartford Whalers, but that iconic Boston D. I'm very excited for the PWHL to be moving forward with these first six team names. And I'm also very excited to watch the Boston Fleet this season, see Erin Frankel in net, one of the best women goalies in the world, with a 92.9 save percentage in her first year in the PWHL. She was a graduate of Northeastern, where in her final season as a senior, she put up a 95.6% save percentage. So very excited to watch her and the rest of the Boston Fleet, including Hillary Knight, and
Sheesh.
excited for the PWHL overall.
Wow. Um, talk about brick walls and net. Oh my goodness. That's exciting. We are certainly going to be covering a lot of PWHL content and bringing that to you throughout the season. I know Panz and I both look forward to really learning a lot about the different athletes and women getting into the sport of hockey. We're looking forward to following a lot of the different developments, and we're excited because we understand the PWHL is growing and it won't stop, and we're looking forward to be a part of that. And we'll certainly be excited to provide you that update and analysis as that comes and the season gets underway. Um, Another piece of news that I want to cover that came out this week. It actually two pieces of news. There's been a lot of player tryouts being signed. I know we have Pacioretty being signed to a player tryout up in Toronto. I can go on and on about different players, but two players for the Calgary Flames that came into their organization here this week that could really help bolster some of those gaps that we're seeing on their roster. I know you and I both have, we both love this guy, Jared Tenorti, the ex Blackhawk defender, just signed a 1 year deal with the Flames. This is a under $1 million a year deal. Really, really lucrative for the team there. He's a great player that has made some great strides in his play with the Blackhawks in the last few seasons. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him on the blue line. But someone else that they actually signed to a player tryout is Tyson Barrie. Now that's a name that we've been hearing a lot with different rumors. He was brought up on one of the boards last year during the trade deadline, as well as during the offseason and free agency. There were a lot of different conversations about Tyson Barrie. He's had an incredible career. We've seen his ceiling, and it's pretty impressive. Now, although the last few seasons it's been less consistent, we know the caliber of player he is. We understand what he can bring to the table, and more importantly, what he could do for the Calgary Flames. Right now I see that their blue line missing Killington at the end of this, past season. They had some holes to fill. It looks exciting because adding a guy like Tenorti and then potentially with this player tryout Tyson Barrie, along with Anderson and along with Uyghur, who they already have, who had a really great season last year, produced one of the top five in goals for defensemen. I mean, that's an exciting development in my eyes for Calgary. I think if I was a Calgary Flames fan, I would be more confident in my defense after this week than I was going into this week for sure. But I know they have a lot on that list of defenders on the blue line in that organization. Curious what your thoughts are there, Pans, because there's a lot to uncover.
Like you said, big fan of Jared Tenorti. I think he's a great bottom pair defenseman for any NHL team. He brings a lot of physical play. He steps up. Gets the puck off of offensive players' sticks. And I think both him and Tyson Berry, who is a lot more offensive minded, I think it's two great additions to a Calgary defense that could really use this help. So I'm excited to see both of them play in Calgary. And once again, great additions to the Calgary team.
I love that. Couldn't agree more. Um, another player, on the blue line couldn't hurt there, especially as they add some physicality. A guy like Chris Tanev, I know he's been out of Calgary for a little bit, but that's a player that's a tough hole to fill, and hopefully Tenorti can take some of that shot blocking and physicality, and maybe fill that gap there. Another piece of news revolving a player, actually who recently announced his retirement, Jordy Ben, the longstanding Canuck, but has played in a few teams and organizations around the league. He announced his retirement. We want to just reach out and provide our best of luck and just support for him. He's been an incredible cornerstone for a lot of different years here in the NHL, and his game is an exciting one. He was more of the physical player, similar to Tenorti. He's gotten in some interesting fights, and I always loved watching him really go into corners and come out with a puck. He is a great defender. And his brother Jamie Ben is the captain of the Dallas Stars. He's still playing in the league. He's still leading, and that team's an incredible team on its own trajectory. But we want to give our best out to the Ben family and specifically Jordy in his retirement. Anything you'd want to add there, bud?
I think you covered just about all of it. Absolute heck of a defenseman, Jordy Ben. Big physical guy. Showed his toughness almost every single shift. And wishing him all the best in retirement. Absolutely hell of a career.
Definitely. Well, one of the last pieces of news we want to cover on today's pod is actually revolving Sid the Kid. He's one of the best to ever do it. Certainly one of the best in our lifetimes. Um, but there is some recent news and reports that came out. He actually was just reported saying he's very confident that a deal's coming. No deal has been made quite yet on a contract extension for Sidney Crosby, but it does sound like he wants to be a Penguin for life. He wants to finish out his career there. I want to get into some of our predictions, some of our thoughts for what that contract might look like. But, beforehand, I just wanted to provide some clarity on some milestones. Now, we're doing a milestone segment here down the line in this season to kind of go through the entire league. Exciting players, milestones to look out for, some coaches, some organizations, some goaltenders, and their milestones that they're approaching, and things to look forward to. Because as fans, I think that's great. It gives even more of a kind of an edge to what you're looking at when you're watching a game, especially when a big rivalry game comes to mix and there's a milestone that's close. Those players are pushing a little bit more, right? But some of these milestone pieces with Sidney Crosby are just incredible. I mean, it's one of the reasons he's going to be on many people's Mount Rushmores at the end of his career. But going into that, it looks like he's actually 8 goals away from hitting 600 goals. That's incredible. I mean, just from anyone, I mean, there's so few on that list. So very impressive stuff there. He's actually 46 assists away from tying Gordie Howe. That's right. Gordie Howe. Looking into that contract, Panz, what are your thoughts? What do you think that contract's going to come out to? What are your expectations? And what's your prediction there?
Sidney Crosby is one of the all-time greats, not just of our lifetime, but I think of the entire history of the NHL. He I think he deserves a lot more money than he has been paid throughout his career, but I think he's stuck with the same cap hit of 8.7 mil practically his entire career. I think he stays with that number. Birthday of 8787. That's the reason he wears the number. So I think he sticks with that for a cap hit. Probably around 3 to 4 years is what I'm expecting. I believe he still deserves more at the age of 37. This year, this past season at least, he had his third most amount of goals of his entire career, putting up 42. I think he's still able to get a few more extremely solid seasons in. He's still one of the best players in the world. We're talking about the fifth most amount of NHL playoff points, Sidney Crosby with 201. So, very excited to see what his next contract will be. And as always, excited to watch him play and hopefully put up another 40 goal season.
Man, that's a great point. He really is that player that, when I think of GOATs in my lifetime, he certainly is up there. I mean, what is he? 37 years old. He's putting up 94 points. 37 years old and he's putting up just under 100 points. I mean, I know, I think we all know that there's very few people on this earth who could do that. And it's really impressive stuff. I do agree that he deserves more than what he's been making. I think that was a team friendly deal, as we discussed on our last podcast. Now, I know there was some motivation behind the number, of course. Now, I do also have some things to bring up with regards to that team. I do not know how much cap they are working with. I also am not sure necessarily where their head is at with this next season. If they're looking to get to the cup, I don't know. A lot of people had them kind of on the fringe of playoffs. This year, I personally do not have them in the playoffs. So I'm not necessarily sure how that might factor in with Dubas and his conversations with Crosby. But I'm actually going to say, I like that recommendation. I like that prediction. It very well could just be that 8.7 for another few years. I would like to say that he deserves 9.5 by, I will say 4. So 4 years by 9.5 million. To me, that sounds like a fitting cost for a guy who's one of the best face-off players, one of the best two-way players. He's still got one of the best backhands in the league. He's still one of the better skaters in the league, being that he's still 37. I mean, it's incredible what that man is. He's superhuman, and paying a little extra for him is well worth it, especially if he certainly has the opportunity to go somewhere, but he's choosing he's choosing that he wants to end his career in the place he started. And so few players do that nowadays. And if I were the Penguins, if I was Dubas, I'd almost give him a blank check. That's how big of an impact he's had. Now obviously that's a little exaggerated, but yeah, I don't know if you'd have anything to add there, Pans, but moving forward here, this actually taps off all of our recent news that we wanted to cover today. There was a lot going on in the world of hockey this past week. We do have tons and tons of content. This is a little shorter episode this week. Look forward to producing a new episode next week with regards to just the team analysis. If you follow us on Twitter, follow us by watching us here on Spotify, and follow us on Instagram, you'll understand that we are doing a team breakdown and analysis leading up to the puck drop on October 4th. Please continue to follow, like, share, subscribe, and continue to listen for more content. Next week we're going to be doing a lot of team breakdowns. It's going to be a little longer of an episode, but we're looking forward to providing that for you, so everyone has everything they need to know about each team's offseason, what happened last season, and what's leading into this one. Just to kind of build more excitement around every single fan base around the league. But we're looking forward to bringing you that and so much more exclusive content here from Chalk Talk, presented to you by Cap Wizard. Without further ado, I want to call it for this podcast. Pans, it's always a pleasure working with you every chance I get. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, buddy.
And
Always a great chance to talk hockey with you. Thought this was a great time to just talk about the news. We have a lot more coming, more analysis, possibly putting out 2 episodes this next week, but we'll find out as the time comes. But very excited to bring you more content, and hope you enjoyed it.
Couldn't have said it any better myself, buddy. Look out for some more updates via our Twitter page, and just keep following us here on Spotify. Regular content to be coming at you, whether it's once a week or a few times. But looking forward to next week's podcast. We'll be providing you a deep dive into a lot of teams' analysis in the offseason Until then, let's call it for today, Pans. It's been real. And much love, brother. We'll talk soon.
Great talk, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.